Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're systematically dismantling the absolute illusion that extreme success comes from passion, fleeting motivation, or, those easy life hacks everyone is always trying to sell you. We're unpacking a truly intense, eye-opening conversation between neurobiologist Andrew Huberman and former Navy SEAL David Goggins. We're literally looking under the hood of immense inner strength, blending raw, unfiltered lived experience with cutting-edge brain science. So if you want to know what it actually takes to forge an unstoppable will, you're in exactly the right place.
To kick things off, Goggins drops his hard truth that completely shatters our modern expectations. He says, hard work looks horrible. It's not motivating. It looks like a man being stuck in a dungeon. And honestly, he hits the nail on the head. Real growth, it isn't some glamorous movie montage with an uplifting soundtrack playing in the background. It's brutally unglamorous, and yeah, it's usually done entirely alone.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, the myth of motivation and why hacks fail us.
The core message we're starting with here is pretty simple but totally profound. Stop looking for hacks. Goggins points out that people are constantly seeking out seminars, reading endless self-help books, downloading apps, all to find a convenient shortcut. But they're completely missing the fact that real transformation requires directly confronting the exact things we absolutely hate. Friction isn't the obstacle blocking your path. Friction is the path. It's the growth.
Which brings us to section 2, embracing the daily friction and the wildly tedious process of mastery. To really understand this, we just need to look at Goggins' everyday routine right now as he studies to become a highly specialized paramedic. Because he was born with severe learning disabilities, including ADHD, he doesn't have a photographic memory. He can't just casually skim a textbook before a test. Instead, he relies on this grueling, totally repetitive 4-step manual process. First, he writes absolutely everything down. Second, he works to visually memorize the page. Third, he painstakingly learns the pronunciation of all these complex medical words. And finally, he drills the exact dosages. He does this for hours on end, constantly writing the same things out by hand until his brain is literally forced to absorb the data. He's super upfront about his own reality, saying, I have to go over the same page over and over and over again. Everything I do in life, it sucks. And this brutally tedious daily friction, that is exactly how someone who once considered themselves the absolute bottom of the barrel, 300 pounds, highly insecure, struggling to read, forces immense inner growth. He didn't find a magic study pill. He deliberately chose the dungeon. Moving on to section 3, the neuroscience of willpower and the actual biological truth behind the grind. Now, this is where it gets crazy. Meet your interior mid-cingulate cortex, or the AMCC. This is a specific region of the brain that scientists are now realizing functions as the literal seat of willpower, and maybe even the will to live. In the absolute most fascinating part of this discovery, this brain area physically changes its structure and size based entirely on our willingness to embrace the suck. Andrew Huberman shares some truly staggering scientific facts about this. The AMC is actually smaller in obese individuals, but it actively grows when they diet. It's naturally larger in athletes. But here is the massive takeaway. The AMC only grows when you are doing unwanted, hard tasks. And thanks to the rules of neuroplasticity, it works in reverse too. It literally shrinks like a muscle the moment you become inactive or completely comfortable. So it requires constant, deliberate upkeep. So that brings us to this absolute gut punch of a realization. Anything you actually like doing will not grow your willpower. 0. If you love lifting weights, going to the gym and lifting to failure doesn't grow your AMC. If you love taking ice baths, sitting in the freezing cold doesn't grow it either. It only grows when you force yourself to do the exact thing you are avoiding. Because at the end of the day, there's no shortcut. As Goggins puts it, the hack is going to suck. It's you against you. And if you misunderstand that, you have a real problem. If you think there's a supplement, a perfect playlist, or some optimized morning routine that'll do the heavy lifting for you, you've completely misunderstood how the human brain actually builds tenacity. You literally have to seek out the tasks you despise. That takes us to section 4, driven by the stick, and why typical rewards just aren't enough. See, while most of society is out there constantly searching for the carrot, things like passion, immediate rewards, cheap dopamine hits, and endless motivation, Goggins' biological engine is powered entirely by the stick. There is no carrot for him. There's no triumphant music playing in his head. There is only the stick, pushing him forward through the friction. And what exactly is that stick? Well, he says it best. I am haunted. It's the relentless, haunting fear of regressing. It's the deep-seated memory of being a 300-pound, insecure kid who lied just to get people to like him. He's constantly haunted by the bottom, knowing full well that if he stops, that weak version of himself is waiting right there in the shadows to take over again. Which brings us to this big, scary number: 0. That represents the exact number of days off you get. Because the terrifying truth of neuroplasticity, as Huberman pointed out, is that the AMC shrinks like silly putty the exact moment you stop pushing. Willpower isn't a permanent upgrade you just download to your brain once. It's a daily lease. And rent? Rent is due every single morning. Let's look at our final section, Section 5, Honest, Unbalanced Relationships, and why there can be absolutely no compromises. This extreme biological and psychological reality heavily dictates how someone like Goggins has to navigate his personal life just to maintain his hard-earned willpower. To avoid losing his edge, Goggins is intentionally unbalanced. He opts for upfront, brutal honesty with his partners about his grueling lifestyle right from day one, instead of hiding behind some facade of normalcy. He makes absolutely sure his family is fully provided for. They have everything they need. But in return, he demands heavily protected time for his personal friction. And above all else, he refuses to engage in people-pleasing. He refuses to people-please because compromising his daily friction means literally shrinking his AMC. He says, "I would never, ever compromise David Goggins. Once that willpower is gone, 300-pound David Goggins will walk around with it." Staying hard isn't an act for him. It's not a brand. It's an absolute, non-negotiable survival mechanism to keep his past self from returning. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a direct challenge to your own willpower and your own neuroplasticity. Look at your life right now. What is the one thing you are avoiding today? Because according to the actual neuroscience of the AMC, that very thing you are running away from, that is the exact key to unlocking the strength you've been searching for. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.